Awesome. Okay, great. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm Asma Chaudhry. Welcome to the conversation for the Washington Sculptors Group on becoming a professional in the art world. As we get started, I wanted to make sure that we mention a number of great benefits for becoming a WSG member. We have a wonderful newsletter that you can submit articles to, share and promote your work, and learn about relevant opportunities. But the upcoming deadline is August 23rd, which is just 3 days away, okay? So please make sure to send those items to Linda Smith Bouge, and she's reachable at membernews@washingtonsculptors.org, okay? And we'll have all of this information for you after in the slide deck. We also have our member gallery on the WSG website, which is a great resource to getting your work out there. And I love to hear that we have members from all over the country and abroad, so please take advantage of that opportunity. Furthermore, we have great programming, such as tonight's conversation.
Annie, could you flip the slides on?
Okay,
And
so tonight's, yep.
flip the slides.
Any next slide, you got it. Tonight's program is the second in a 5-part series for the Washington Sculptors Group members and other artists on professional skills development. 2 weeks ago, if you remember, we kicked off this series with writing your artist statement. And tonight we have developing your elevator speech. And coming up on September 21st, please mark your calendars for approaching a gallery. Okay, and then the next 2 sessions that we're going to have, looking ahead, we have in October, speaking with curators or collectors, a very interesting topic, and in the future, finding opportunities and networking, which I'm very excited about. So as a bit of housekeeping, yes, we will definitely be recording tonight's program and posting it to our YouTube channel and website. I also want to mention that our WSG chairperson, Annie Farrar, is also helping to drive the slides for the program. Thank you, Annie. We will also be sharing the slides to everyone, so no need to scramble to write everything down. I know it'll be a lot of information, good information. And finally, we look forward to receiving your feedback with a survey following tonight's program and encourage you to help us with future opportunities as a volunteer. Thank you. So, as a networking opportunity, before we start our conversation, we would love to turn the Zoom camera on you and ask you if you'd like to introduce yourself in 1 or 2 sentences, okay, as you feel comfortable. And trust me, this can be shorter and should be shorter than a typical elevator speech. You are more than welcome to unmute your mic and introduce yourself. Please go ahead.
Joan, why don't you start?
Who wants to start? I'll start. I'm in the upper left corner. Can you all see me?
Yes. Hi, Mary.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Early. I am a member of the board of WSG and also a longtime member. I joined the organization in around maybe 2004 or 5 at the encouragement of Joan Weber, who is to my left. Thank you, Joan, for involving me in WSG. I am an artist. I work in sculpture and installation and temporary works. I also make drawings and other things. And in my daytime life, I am the director at Hemphill Fine Arts, which is an art gallery in Washington, D.C. So that is the short story. Annie, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Annie Farrar, and I am the chairperson for the Washington Sculptors Group, and happy to have you all here today. I also am an artist and work in museums.
Thank you, Annie. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves?
If you were first,
yes,
the last
I
person
would.
to go should like nominate the next person so it flows.
Sure. Okay.
Yes.
I do see a phone caller. Audio, please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Carol Levin. I'm a sculptor, a member of the Sculptors Group, and looking forward to the meeting.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay. Please go ahead.
I'll speak up.
Thank you, Noah. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Noah McWilliams. I'm a University of Maryland graduate student. I just recently joined. I think my membership is still good. I don't know. Yeah, so I'm a sculptor and illustrator. I work a lot in soft sculpture, sewing, quilting, that kind of thing, and combining that with sort of sculptural frames and sci-fi imagery. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Noah.
Sure.
Sure. Anyone else?
I'm Helen Kessler. I'm up in the
Okay.
Baltimore area. I do photography and photo-based sculpture using photogrammetry, create 3D forms, and I'm also the moderator of the WSG discussion group.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Helen. And I think, Mark, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, pardon me. I'm a visitor. I'm not a member of the group. I used to live in DC, then about 7 years ago, I moved up to Pennsylvania to take care of my elderly parents. And I do mostly drawing and painting, but also some really painted roofs.
Excellent.
And I'm very grateful for you guys to opening this up beyond the group, because I really learned a lot from the first one. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Mark. Okay, anyone next? I'm scrolling through hands. Oh, I saw a hand. Ira, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Ira Tattleman, multidisciplinary artist here in DC. A lot of my work is about how human actions impact the environments around us. And I have a piece in the Artina show out at Sandy Spring.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Jerome, did I see your hand? And I'm so glad to see you again today.
Yes, it's me. I'm happy to be here as a sculptor. I work in steel. After having spent 43 years having an interior design firm in New York City, doing corporate work. So I started my sculpture career at the age of 62, and last week turned 85.
That's fantastic. Thank you so
Happy
much. And
birthday.
happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yes, and can I, Sarah, yes, I was looking right for you. Sarah, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Rodman, and I work across the visual and performing arts genre, and delighted to be participating in Artina. Come see my piece. Come see the show in Sandy Spring. So I like to do art that brings people together and it creates common experiences.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I love the plug for Artina. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm scrolling through. Any other hands? Yes, Annie Broderick, please.
I'm a new member of WSG, really excited to join in. I live in Arlington, Virginia, and I am a sculptor. I am interested in compression versus expansion of the self. And so my work involves a lot of contrast in materials, you know, hard and soft. And I'm showing my first installation in the show that's coming up at the McLean Project for the Arts. So I'm really excited about that. And that's a direction I want to move more toward. So
Wonderful. Thank you. We appreciate you sharing. And did I see, let's see, someone unmuted here. Oh, yes, Betty Ann, please go ahead. And then Suzanne Samuels. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Betty Ann Kundrat, and I live in Laurel, Maryland. I'm a new member, and I'm a Christian artist and writer. And I've got a series of sculptures about my journey with God. And I'm, writing a book too about my journey and with the Lord. And also I've written a children's book that I'm looking to get published to help children with who've been sexually abused.
Thank you for sharing. Go ahead, Suzanne Samuels.
Yeah, hi, I'm brand new, very brand new, and I kind of was a graphic designer who transitioned to jewelry design, and that's what I do most. And I'm now just turning into some stone sculpture work. So I'm doing some carving. So instead of additive art, like jewelry is more additive, this is a subtractive art. So it's kind of a fun transition for me.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing too. I'm going to do one more round. Chi Kung, please go ahead if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm a brand new member of the group, primarily a painter. Started sculpture. Background is in architecture, and my day jobs in development of spreadsheets and all massing studies. So it's my way of tapping into the design side of things. Keeps me balanced. Looking forward to the talk.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else? Last call. If I see your hand, Brian English.
Brian English?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Please.
I'm actually Eloisa Escudero. I just have my husband's account.
Thank you.
And I'm a newly member, and I applied for the Millie Green Show, so I think I'm official.
Excellent.
And I usually do performance, and I sometimes make my sculptures for my performance, and then they send in a gallery as a sculpture, and then I perform with the sculpture. Lately, I haven't been doing any. I have been doing some concrete work, small, because I can't store any more art. So I've been doing a lot of 3D objects online, like on 3D objects, digital 3D objects, so I don't have to store them, and perhaps later on they'll become something. And then I'm making videos with them also too. But my work is very sculpture involved, but I'm a multidisciplinary artist.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I think you are doing some aerobic activity, which is wonderful. Good for you. I love that.
I'm watching you.
I can barely multitask. Thank you.
Yes, I have one of those elliptical things.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Hi, Asma.
Hi,
Asma,
okay.
this
Yes.
is Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
My cybersecurity won't allow me to put my camera on at the moment. I've got to go deep down to fix that.
Sure.
But I'm a fairly new member. But back in the day, I did sculpture at Brighton College of Art in England, and then I taught in Dublin at the National College of Art, mainly large environmental installations, and I worked a lot with paper, very large, 6-10 feet paper works. Then life changed, so I took a detour into IT telecoms, and then another detour zagged back from that. I am a sailor, and a lot of my love went into my boat, but my boat had to be deconstructed. And now I don't have a boat, and I've been making art, and I suddenly realized I now have permission and energy instead of loving my boat. And you know what you do with boats, they're like horses, you constantly shaping and polishing and painting. I now have a shed full of old wood. I'm free agent, I'm retired, and I realized that painting on a flat rectangle, no matter how big, isn't it. It's not quite it. So I'm so excited to have found you guys, and the exhibition in the Athenaeum with the color, that made the connection for me, and thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brenda. Okay, Elizabeth Ash, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Liz. Once you've met me, I'm Liz.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a multidisciplinary sculptor. I recreate domestic spaces. The image behind me is I love doing interactive forts with the public. They're always different, and this has just been a favorite one of mine. I have been painting in a series, which I haven't ever had this series, this many paintings. I'm so happy. It's over 15 paintings at this point since COVID started. And they are inspired by my month in Spain, where Monica is. Yeah. I can't seem to get away from this damn mountain range. But I'm giving them a tilt that is very isolationist and claustrophobic at the same time.
Wow. Thank you so much, Liz. I appreciate that. Excellent, excellent. It is a pleasure to meet you all, and thank you for being courageous to turning on that Zoom camera. I really do appreciate that. Okay, so we're now going to get into our panelists tonight. Some of you may know Joan Weber. She is and was on the Washington Sculptors Group Board for many years, and we're so excited that she's back with us. Thank you, Joan. She is a business person. After teaching 11 years at the university level, she built her own printing machinery export business with her aunt. For 23 years, she was a sales VP in a large printing company here in the DC area. And for the last 15 years, she's been working in commercial real estate development. Thank you, Joan. Right. Yeah. And next we have Eric Celarier. He lives and works in the DC metro area. He has a BA from the University of Maryland. He has an MFA from the University of Cincinnati. Eric is an artist, educator, reviewer, and curator. He describes the central theme of his work as biological evolution associated with human impact. Much of Eric's work can be seen as designing opportunities to allow audiences to construct personally meaningful understandings of our world. Once again, we are grateful for both of you joining us tonight. Okay.
Thank you very much, Asma.
Of course, thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. So a quick intro of me. I'm Asma Chaudhry, a sculptor, educator, and WSG board member. You may be seeing me posting on social media. I love to hear about your inspirational stories and sharing them forward, so thank you. And it is my pleasure to be hosting these WSG conversations on professional skills development, with tonight's focus on developing your elevator speech. Now on to the programming. That's why we're all here. Developing and being comfortable delivering an elevator speech is difficult to do and a very useful skill. Some important tips to know. You typically have 30 to 60 seconds to inspire a future connection. Your chances of success are less likely the longer amount of time it takes to convey your ideas. You definitely want your audience to want you to tell them more. And finally, it's so important that you need to be ready to expand. So now let's turn it over to Joan and Eric. The floor is yours.
Before we sort of start with the whole program, I just wanted to add that it was wonderful hearing all the new members and members that I know for many years talking about your work and talking a little bit about your biographies. And the short form of my history is I'm the only person in the group who's probably not a sculptor and never has been one. And was the only person on the board, certainly, who's not a sculptor. In college, I loved sculpture and dance, and next to a person who in 2 days did the most extraordinary bust of Eleanor Roosevelt I've ever seen. And it occurred to me that I don't have the talent to do that the quality of work I want to have in my life. And if I could earn money to buy it, that had value too in the art community. And that's my connection, basically, to sculpture, a love of sculpture, of three-dimensional work, and of dance, of contemporary ballet. Much of what we're going to say today is from direct experience and observation and from research. We did a lot of reviewing of the literature about this, and we're providing some resources and some references at the end of the program for you to do your own research on this. As I think Asma mentioned, the full discussion and slides will be made available to you, and we are taping this, so that will also be available. So to get started, Eric, will you share with us what is an elevator speech?
Well, hi, Joan. Elevator speech is a short statement about what you do, and it only lasts, as we've been saying, for a very, very brief time, about as long as a typical elevator ride, and should end in some sort of connection.
Basically, it was what you're trying to do essentially in the connection is to have somebody respond to you and want to invite you, you want to enroll somebody. It's borrowed originally from business. It's a way for people to very briefly plant an idea of their company or the company's product or themselves in a way that could be useful to the other. If for most artists, for art in the art context, it'll be an expression to somebody in the art community that matters to you, of your ability to put together an interesting body of work and to say and convey that you have the ability to mount a compelling show. That's what you're trying to do in sort of 30 seconds.
So we got a lot of our ideas from a gentleman named Chris Westfall, who's a pretty big name and in business and business language. He's an American motivational speaker, entrepreneur, and author. He's best known for being a national elevator pitch champion, and he wrote a book called The New Elevator Pitch. And one of his founding principles is that when you're talking to somebody in this elevator, quick speech with somebody, what you're trying to do is show your ability to work with, through, and for other people. I'm going to repeat that. Work with, through, and for other people. So the spotlight isn't so much on you as it is on what you can do for other people. So the first thing we should know about elevator pitches is they're not pitches. And I think it's particularly important for artists to understand that. You're going to try to tell your story to someone. You know, someone you've probably been wanting or waiting to meet, and hopefully leave them with enough of a question as to what, you know, whether they can want to know more about what you do. Do they want to further connect with you because of the things that you said in that brief time? So
one of the things I used to say with my reps is you can't sell anybody anything. People have to buy. And that's very much in line with the statement that an elevator pitch is not really a pitch. It's a presentation of a reason for someone to trust you or want to work with you. There are several important thoughts about what's most important in an elevator speech, and brevity is one. Authenticity is another. It has to be conversational because it is an interactive moment, and we'll talk about that. What you're responding to and saying has to be really contextual, and credibility is an important part of that. In terms of brevity, it goes without saying, but we're saying it, that you have about 30 seconds to say what you need. I was going to Google and I didn't get a chance to. How long does it take to go from the 4th floor in a loft building somewhere down to the ground floor? But what we're saying in terms of elevator speeches is also obviously very appropriate in networking, in receptions that you'll go to, and in any situation where somebody's inclined to ask you, oh, and tell me a little bit about yourself, or tell me what you do, or tell me about your work. And a very good exercise is to time yourself speaking and telling your story for 30 seconds. And now with phones that have the recorders, time yourself speaking and find out for yourself what 30 seconds feels like and how much longer or shorter were you doing that, were you speaking. Asma, this is,
yes, Jim.
I want to surprise you. I am now,
I knew this.
I'm a curator whose work you've seen and who you've sort of been wanting to get to know for a while. And I met you at a reception, and we're heading down the elevator, and I'm saying, Asma, would you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh my goodness. Well, first I'm getting all warm and red and my eyes are widening, but sure, let's go for it. Oh my gosh. Hi, my name is Asma Chaudhry. I'm a sculptor and furniture maker who loves to work with wood and steel. I enjoy yarn wrapping my metal sculptures with colorful yarn, inspired with a Bollywood flair. I've learned so much about the popular movement of yarn mobbing too.
Okay. I'm guessing, but that would be, I don't know, Eric, did you time it? We were going to time it. I guess we didn't coordinate that.
I tell you, I'm afraid.
It was just about 30 seconds. So
less than.
We're going to be, with Asma's permission, and one of the things you'll hear through this is essentially you want to give your audience in your rehearsals permission to say, to be critical,
Mm-hmm.
looking through and using Asma's little statement there in that conversation.
Yeah, I think the first thing I think that should be said is that there's a lot of good things in there, a lot of things that make me want to know more about your artwork. I think the things where it could be improved, though, is that you want to probably put your name and you know, and what you do, and who you are in terms of you know, whether you're, you know, if you're a sculptor or a painter or whatever. You want to put that down a little further in your program.
Okay.
You want to sort of say what you do first. It's always good to try to make a connection with the person that you're talking with. And maybe asking them, or saying, well, how kind are you to ask that? Or if you're still breaking in cold with somebody, we're you know, you might be at a gallery or something and say, oh, I really like these pieces. What do you think of them? So that you're putting the spotlight a little bit on them. I think the stuff about the yarn bombing, that's really, you know, that really makes me want to know a little bit more about what Bollywood yarn bombing is, because that's interesting to me. So, you know, you want to lead with your best stuff. That would be, in my eyes, your best stuff.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that feedback, because I think what I missed was I didn't talk really about my signature pieces or where my themes are going. I was so caught up in introducing who I am, kind of my demographics, where I'm from, to set the tone. So I really appreciate that feedback.
I mean,
one of the things that when you're doing that exercise, and we invite you to do it with friends and family, is, and we'll talk about that later again too, is to ask yourself, what did I feel I successfully included? What did I feel that I might have left out that I wanted to say? As Asma said, I didn't talk about my signature pieces. Did you feel that your speech was coherent? Did it have an arc to it to some extent? And I think it really did. Asma, and was the speech informative? So the idea of what you included, what you didn't include, and was the speech coherent, and was it informative, are sort of ideas that you want to ask yourself. Eric?
Yeah. So can we, I think we need to go back one slide, am I right? Because we should put authenticity. Oh, that's very good. So, so authenticity, one of the things very important, and I hear this over and over again, and especially the last couple of days when I've been talking to some gallerists, is you want to be able to have those key phrases and stuff at your fingertips. You want to be telling your story. If you know a little bit about the gallerist going into it, or the curators, or whoever you might be talking to, it helps a lot to know what might interest them, so that you can channel what you're saying to the, you know, so that you can edit it for their particular consumption. What we're trying to present, and this is another thing that Chris Westphal talks about in terms of business, you want to tell your story, and particularly in the arts, I think that's really important. It has to seem real. You are not, you are not trying to sell somebody. You want to basically show them the kinds of things that you can do. You're describing who you are and what you can do, and maybe what you can do for them, so that in the future, if they see some way to connect, maybe they'll remember that maybe you're somebody who can deliver. So these kind of interactions need to be conversational, which means that you are not learning something by rote and just giving it out the same way every time. If you're talking to one kind of person, it's going to be a little bit different from one person to another. The content is pretty much the same, but you know, if you're talking to a gallerist, they may want to know that you had a successful show. Whereas maybe if you're talking to somebody who's putting together you know, by successful, maybe I mean one that sold some pieces. But if you're, say, talking to a curator, maybe they want to know that you had a successful show and that a lot of people really enjoyed it and it was an experience. But you know, it was an installation, and the type of installation that doesn't necessarily sell, but has the ability to further found your career within the arts. So this is an interactive moment. You're going to be telling yourself a little bit about, yes?
I'm sorry, Annie.
Yeah, we should be on conversational now.
Annie, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So you're going to try to you know, put the spotlight on them. Thank you very much. You're very kind to ask. So, you know, what do you think about their work in this show? I really like it. That kind of thing. Use simple language. Do not use pompous language. Do not pull out your jargon book or your thesaurus. You want to be able to be speaking native language here. You want to stay current. You want to be talking about the work that you're doing today. You know, I was just working in my studio on kind of things. Ask what the preferred method for contact is. That can be more than one thing these days. It used to be a certain kind of way. You know, now it might be email. It could even be I don't know, maybe text or something like that. Maybe, you know, sometimes there are preferred ways to contact the gallery, and they prefer that that's the only way you do it. So you need to find those ways out. And then you should close with some sort of card or permission to give it. You know, and you need to be cognizant of what if the person has wine in one hand and cheese in the other, that's not the time to shove a card underneath their nose, because they got no place to put it. So, it needs to be contextual. This is this sort of extension of conversational. You should know who the people you are that you're meeting, and is always best if somebody can introduce you. If you have a friend or acquaintance, or you met somebody at the gallery who knows that person and they're willing to introduce you, that goes a long way to making it not such a cold call when you're meeting somebody for the first time. You want to meet and befriend other artists. Part of art is a social activity, even though there's a lot of time spent, you know, in your studio working alone maybe. But you need to get out to galleries and shows and events and volunteer for things and be parts of groups, you know, like this one. And the reason is because when you get into these situations, the more people you know in them, the more likely you are to be less nervous, the more likely you are to find other connections with other people. I mean, you know, my philosophy on this is that you're going to be part of you're going to be part of the art community. So it's not just people giving stuff to you, you will be giving back to that community. And that's how people end up, you know, really being successful. You need to know your own artist statement backwards and forwards. You cannot be unfamiliar with what you're doing. You should research other artists in your area and other artists outward, you know, otherwise. You should be very familiar with the kind of art that looks like yours, and or art that might partner with yours should you want to be in a group show together. Or one of the great ways to do that is open studios, because open studios are this large time for a lot of artists where they might be there all day and it might get slow. And that's always a great time to connect with somebody, talk with them on a you know, not a very pressured kind of basis, and really get to know the work in your area, because you could go through one of these gallery complexes and see, you know, anywhere near, you know, 50 to 70 to maybe 100 artists in one day. Finally, you need to visit and connect with a gallery. If you're really going to approach a gallery, you should be a regular at their events for 6 months to a year. They should probably know you coming through the door and know already who you are before you start sending them stuff and trying to make that kind of connection. I don't think that coming right out of the gate, you know, demanding a show or something like that would really go over well with anybody. The gallery needs to know that you really understand what they do, and it's in your interest to know what the gallery does, so that, you know, that you see how you might fit into that mosaic, should that be something that you're interested in doing. So anyhow, you should know the galleries that you're connecting with and the people that you're connecting with.
I wanted to comment, if I might, on a couple of things that Eric said. And the first one I want to underscore as a salesperson, and actually as somebody who interviewed and hired over a long career, a whole lot of people. And I used to think if the spotlight's on you, it's in the wrong place, especially in sales. If you start with the I, and we all did, in fact, in the introductions, who am I? I am, because that's what we're taught and that's how we're trained to introduce ourselves, and from sort of elementary school, that's drilled into us. On the other hand, if somebody says, please tell me about yourself, a very simple way, but it's a habit you have to get, is to say thank you for asking. All of a sudden, you've put the light back on them. It was very kind of you to ask. Lights back on them again. It only took 2 fractions of a second, and you are now in a position to have enrolled them very differently than starting out with I am. So if the spotlight's on you, it's in the wrong place, and a very nice way is thank you, and thank you for asking, or it's very kind of you to ask. There was one other thing I wanted to underscore here, and that was the word homework. Well, we always associate homework with high school, college, sort of studying, and what we're studying for is our careers, is our lives. And oftentimes people who are art producers have other careers, and the art becomes out later in their lives or earlier in their lives. But basically artists for that product and that function are independent manufacturers. You are creating your universe, your business, your appreciation, your audience. And so the investment of time that it will take, that in the things that Eric was suggesting, of get to know the context, get to know the audiences in the DC area, in your community, I think is a very important part of, and a very good investment of your time, because you're essentially career building. You're building a future in that investment of time. And then there was one other thing, which is when you were talking about the art community, one of the things at Art Table, which is a national organization of women professionally in the visual arts, talks about is arts ecosystems. What is the arts ecosystem in DC, for example, in the metropolitan area? And I think when we talk, we often don't think that we are all interdependent. We sometimes think, I'm an artist, I'm vulnerable. I have to be a supplicant going to a gallerist to say, please show me. In fact, we're all contributors to a whole enterprise called the art community, the art ecosystem in this area. And the volunteerism in organizations, the being present in the art ecosystem is a very critical part. Taking it seriously and participating fully is a very important part for me in supporting that art ecosystem in this universe, in this area. I just simply, I used to say to my reps, I have a lot of things I said to myself. My poor sales reps, they got one-line sentences. It wasn't quite that way. But if you want their business, at least learn how to spell their names correctly. And my metaphor in this case is a metaphor. What Eric is saying, get to know the galleries, get to know the gallerists, get to know the independent curators who will be at those gallery openings. Get to know the art teachers, the art professors in town. Get to know the art interested people, because you don't know who is going to be able to help open a door for you and what connection will matter. And so part of doing that homework, I was metaphorically saying spell their names correctly. But if you want their business, show the respect of working to understand who they are and what they're looking for. Because the only way you'll match what they're looking for is by having that knowledge. One of the last elements of what's important in the conversation, in this elevator speech, is credibility. And credibility is my worth knowing. Am I, or is my work worth knowing? And in a way, how simple, I don't know how, I can't say specifically how to do it, but in a way you want to share some credentials that, for example, somebody just said, I'm self-taught. That is a credential. That tells us very simply that you are working at your craft, and you're looking around you with wide eyes, and you're looking around you with wide eyes to work to work. That's a credential. That tells me a lot about you, very positive things. At my show on Thor, the following was written in I don't know the specifics of what you say, but what you want to do is talk to a mentor, a school, a gallerist, someone that you might want to, someone or some function or some situation that will add to your credits. Credibility in this case is your credits. What are your credentials? And putting yourself into context. So people like to do business and will hire people they like and trust. And so it's a difficult thing, but in those same 30 seconds, essentially you want to convey that you're a person whose work has value, and that you have value and credibility in what you're presenting. In our last conversation, we're going to switch gears now to a little bit on how do you prepare for prepare your elevator speech. In our last conversation, we actually gave multiple examples of how to find the right words. And we're not going to repeat that whole sequence here because it was pretty elaborate and had a variety of exercises and ways to do it. But we are going to give, I think Eric's going to give a couple of specific examples that I think people found pretty useful. And so we're just going to repeat those here, but you also can go back to the previous files to find those others if those are interesting to you. Eric?
Yeah, so we had an exercise last time where an artist would come up with 20 words to describe their artwork, methods, materials, intent, those kinds of things. Or it's not just words, it's words or phrases. And then you'd hone those down to like 10 words and then maybe to 5. And you should really be thinking about words that might be searchable, because then if you use these example words that are sort of the distillation of everything you do, when you sort of put this kind of sentence, maybe putting them all together or something like that, or a couple sentences all together, and you put it on a website or something like that, then maybe it comes up in a search a little more easily. Certainly there are search functions on databases, galleries that might be online, and so finding the right words to sort of distill the very essence of what you do is a good idea. And this sort of helps you because you're going to talk about all the different things it could be, kind of, and then whittle it down to what makes me different than everybody else. Then you really want to, once you create something that you want to say that you think represents you, you're going to need to practice that and record that. Record yourself talking to family and friends until, and then listen very closely to those patterns and see those reoccurring words. If you haven't really distilled it all the way down, just talking about your artwork and then coming up with a list of descriptors. That's another way to come up with that descriptors. But then you want to practice it in front of friends. And finally, you should get a lot of your work together and lay it on all out. You should be finding patterns and things that make you unique within the kind of artwork that you make. So it's very important that your work does have some sort of pattern to it. In other words, does it have some sort of line of thinking that connects all these pieces together? Because I think that's very important to show some sort of, generally unified position of what kinds of things that you do. All right, so now I think we're at write, the part about writing now. All right, very good, thank you. So then after you get, what you think is the right words and stuff, you need to get that vocabulary down so you're not like tongue-tied trying to remember the words that you normally use to describe your work. You're not memorizing lines. You're going to practice, but you're not trying to memorize it in such a way that it won't come out differently because it's going to be conversational. You need to set out strategies of telling your story in different ways in different contexts. And I think I talked to this a little bit earlier when I was saying, what you say to a curator might not be the same thing to a gallerist. It might not be the thing you say to Uncle Bob. All right, there's all sorts of different ways of describing the same thing, probably using a lot of the same terms, but like, yes. Joan, did you have something to say?
Are you there?
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. Can you hear me?
Joan, I think your screen has frozen. Okay.
Okay, good. All right. Anyhow, so you want to set out strategies of telling your story to different people. You strengthen your message by rehearsing with friends and coaches. If you just say it to yourself, I think that you're not going to be as effective as when you're talking to it. And I'll tell you a quick story about this is that I participated in a show called Art Prize in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which gives out a very, very large art prize. Used to be $200,000 for the prize. I don't know what it's like now, but they've now split that thing up into several different prizes, and I'm not sure exactly where they are right now. But it was done by popular acclaim, and they had an app for people to vote on So you sat in front of your picture or whatever it is that you made. I had made a sculpture, which is a relief sculpture, tapestry, and I sat there for now I didn't really have my elevator speech going in it, but after the second day I did, because I had talked to hundreds of people. So going to an event, I mean, if you know, sometimes some of the real value of being in a show like maybe Artomatic or something like that, besides the exposure, is to practice these things in a place with people that aren't the people that are the deal breakers or whatever, so that you can really get your story down, so that you're telling it to different people as they come by, and you know, it's sort of a less stressful situation.
Right.
Finally, you need to give your coaches, when you get into sort of one-on-one situation where you're talking about what's working, what's not working, give them permission to be critical. And then that, you know, part of that deal is not being defensive. If they say, well, you know, I felt like this, well, other people are going to feel like they do, and you need to cover all your bases. So you really do need to think about what people might be saying instead of defending yourself, because it really is not very good. What you want to really do is end up getting rid of that fear and the stammering, and that only can happen through preparation and rehearsal.
I have a situation where I had to give a talk, and I'm not a public speaker. I had to give a talk at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. It was Pecha Kucha, which is 6 minutes and 40 seconds. You had 20 minutes a slide, 20 slides, and then there was the shepherd's hook. And so you had to do it within that timetable. It was the hardest thing I ever did. Actually, the talk was supposed to be about what I plan to do to help the arts ecosystem in the Washington metropolitan area. And I had 6 minutes and 40 seconds to do that. And in learning this Pecha Kucha, it took me about a month and a half to write the actual talk. One of the things that the coach told me is to rehearse it standing up, because your posture when you're standing is very, very different. Again, we skipped a slide, but it's okay, I think. It's very different when you're standing up than when you're sitting down, and when you've written your speech sitting down. So when Eric is saying you want to write your speech, and you want to write your speech and rehearse it, and I had here rehearse, and rehearse, I added one, but do it standing up, because it actually, and I would go into my office, and every day before, since it was 6 minutes and 40 seconds, it didn't take very long, I would go into my office, and before I started my day's work, I would stand up and present the talk. And it made a very, very big difference, and I just invite you to use that as a tip and a trick that I learned in presenting. A little bit different on Zoom, but it worked.
Yeah. If we could go back a slide. All right, so what's important here, you're going to paint a vivid picture, a clear picture, your story. You're going to put the characters that may be part of that story, and in your dialogue, you know. So this is something that you create about you, but you want to be able to share it with somebody else. Make it emotional, make it relevant to the person you're talking to. If it isn't, you know, exciting in some way, shape, or form, then you're not going to really be very effective. You want to be able to engage, and you know, the attention of the listener. You want to make it personal, and you want to make sure that you know, you want to make it personal to yourself and to your audience. And then one thing I know that I have a problem with is, if you start out strong, you got to end strong. So you know, I have a tendency to drift off. I mean, that's just something that I have to be cognizant of, because I do that. I mean, I start out sort of at a certain level, and I go lower and lower and lower. You got to keep it strong and keep it consistent. So, so can we go down to leave it out?
Yeah.
Excellent. So you want to leave out the jargon. It's alienated, even though there was a time when people used to write a certain way about art, and it was, you know, sort of a club of difficult language. It no longer is that. So you need to be careful about how you know, what kind of words you put in it, so that it is not, you know, so it's effectively telling your story. Aggressiveness. I talked to several gallerists, and every one of them said this. These last two are really important. You cannot be aggressive with people. You cannot push them, or if they're not ready, demand that they listen to you at that moment. There'll be another time, but you are absolutely, the whole point of this was to make a decent connection, not just get somebody's email and walk out. You probably could have done that without talking to them. But if you come off as overly aggressive, every last one of the gallerists I talked to said, that is the biggest turnoff. And it says that I do not want to work with this person. Mostly it seems to me that because it seems to be all about them and not about your needs at that particular moment. Cliches. Cliche like I'm a people person or something like that, that is just going to fall entirely flat. You need to think about what you're saying that makes you different. And using a cliche is just another way of saying, I'm the same as all these other folks. Gimmicks. If you could think of some sort of clever pick-me-up kind of line about your artwork, don't use it because it will make you look like, you're a jerk. You don't want to be snarky or negative. The last thing that I think a lot of people do want to work with is somebody who comes in and says, they don't like the art that's sitting in front of them. It sort of says to people that you don't like art. Maybe that's not true. Maybe you don't just like this one set of art, but I mean, it generally gives that impression that you might turn on folks. And, I've heard that when you go to an interview, you're not supposed to talk negative about the last job. Well, don't talk negative about the last artist either. It just doesn't, or be snarky or condescending about anybody, all right? Direct references and influences. If you say that your artist, if somebody asks you what your art is like and you say your art is like what, Rothko or somebody like that, and then go on and list all the ways it's like that, I think that you've taken you out of the mix. I mean, you've just said, well, Rothko is a great guy and I like to make stuff like his stuff. But really, you're supposed to be trying to sell a unique vision on the world. You're not doing that if you start talking about, now everybody, there's a time and place to talk about influences. But it can't be so direct. I mean, you could say, I like this artist, I like what he did, and sometimes those things resonate with me. But this is not the time and place to say that kind of stuff. Finally, you do not want to open with your a name, rank, and serial number. So you really don't want to start out with, my name is, and I'm a sculptor. Because what that does is just check off categories for the person to, probably not even consciously, to sort of, oh, I know what this person is. I don't need to really think anymore. But if you start out talking about your work, well, they have to consider that for a lot longer than if you just give them all the information up front. So this was something that I got from Mary Early and also from other people, but that she was very insistent about this. And I think this is important to you. Don't pull out your phone at this particular encounter. It's small. You may have a cracked screen. So it's not the best thing to show. Plus, people aren't going to wait for you to find the right picture. You're shoving something in somebody's face. It's got a lot not going for it, right? You want somebody to take their time with your work in a better space, not in a crowded space where people might be, that's the more they should be wanting to see, and you're trying to give it to them up front. And, if they're at home looking at their computer or at work looking at their computer, they're going to get a better look at your artwork anyway. And that's essentially what you want. You don't want to overload if you end up sending pictures the first time, if you aren't just sending an email with, I met you and I appreciate the time that we spent and here's some more about my artwork. And you'll find all this information on my website, and attach no more than 5 images, probably 3, so that they're not inundated with something. when you go to a gallery opening and you find somebody at a show that you want to connect with, if that person happens to be the gallerist who's running that particular, you have to be very careful about how you approach them that night. They may be very busy at that time. And though it is their job to meet other people and to try to make connections with people and figure out who people, I mean, that's an important thing for them to do. It may be not at that moment their primary responsibility. So if you are able to make a connection to have it has to be very, very brief and you know, with permission, passing the card and asking whether you could connect with them a little later and how you might do that, and only a sentence before you started on, you know, what you do, because that is a time where they're selling art. And you know, making those connections with everybody. They have to make sure everybody in the room is taken care of, and you do not know whether you're getting in between them and a sale if you take a bunch of time away from them, and they may remember that and may take it out on you. Not that they'd want to, but you know, unconsciously, if you lose a big sale because somebody decided to hog your ear at a time when you needed to be talking to an important collector, you might remember that. Most gallerists are extraordinarily giving of their time, considering how much demand they have of it and how few people there are like them that are in a position to help other people in the art world. And so you have to be I have just so much respect for what gallerists do. You have to be respectful of them. They do a lot for the art world. And without them, I don't know really where we would be. So those things all have to be considered when you talk to somebody at a gallery opening or you meet them on the street.
Well, we're going to be talking about networking shortly because of the connection between the elevator speech and networking and going to gallery. But I first wanted to invite everyone who heard Asma's brief elevator speech. And did anyone, and I'll let you think about it, need to have a picture on a phone to get Bollywood colorful yarn bombing? I don't think anyone needed a phone picture to get a picture of what that installation and the process of doing it might look like. So I think part of your responsibility is to come up with a way of talking about your work that creates a complete picture or creates enough of a picture that I can remember it, half an hour later, doing the program, I remember it, and can visualize Bollywood colorful yarn bombing. I want to be there, is all I can say. So Asma, I congratulate you. We hadn't.
Thank you, Joan. That's so gracious of you to say, because
but when we're talking about, we
I was
added,
wondering.
we added the question about the phone because that was
That's great.
Lecture, I'm regularly reduced after the second sentence to a struggle with the phone to find the images.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard that today, Eric brought that in, and I think, yes, that's important. And the intent is for you to create an image, to create a verbal image. It can be 4 words, Bollywood colorful yarn bombing, that creates a whole universe for me to imagine. You don't need a phone for that. So the elevator speech, I don't know if there may be a slide. We're going to be doing a separate program on speaking with a gallery, speaking with gallerists, and on networking in the future. And we're going to be talking also relating, because both are related to social media, now that more and more of the work is being done online, and as events are happening online. But tonight, for the elevator speech, we're really talking about being in a physical networking context. And elevator speech is itself a form of networking. We sort of, a lot of us resist and say, oh, I don't want to go to openings because it's all about small talk. It's a little bit like speed dating. Well, in fact, an elevator speech is a form of speed dating. And it's a way, again, of creating a connection and creating enrollment where you're inviting the other to want to be in your world. A very nice way that in terms of networking, of overcoming that small talk and the speed dating concept is to ask questions. My mother used to say, when you're dating, ask, this was a sexist age that I grew up in, ask your date all about football and sit quietly and let him tell you about football and he'll think you're the smartest person in the world. That never happened. I never could sit quietly enough and I wasn't interested in football. But I did learn, for the most part, to ask open-ended questions. Because, like, what brings you to this event? Not a yes or no question, like, have you ever been to this gallery before? Which is a yes or a no. But what brought you here? What about this particular artist? What about this gallery did you find interesting or made you decide to come here? That really starts giving you information about the other in that conversation. It makes a much more interesting conversation. Read your audience. Are they receptive or distracted? The question of asking permission to give a card, I can't tell you how many times I've been with a wine glass in one hand, a food plate in another hand, and somebody wants to hand me not only a card, but the postcard of their last show. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll put it under here, but I don't have the hand to do it with. So what we talked about is ask the other, is this a good time for me to give you a card? And if it's not, maybe we can meet up before the event ends and we can exchange cards then. Because you also want them to give something to you, and giving you their card is an important gesture. But reading your audience, are they receptive or distracted? Be aware of what's going on right now, and that's what Eric was talking about in terms of if it's a gallerist, is that person very involved in the moment in starting the artist talk at the opening? Well, that's not the time to approach them. You just want to be very aware of that. Your conversation to the moment to address the right person or and the nature of the conversation. I think we've been talking about that, but that is what networking is about, is to be contextual and to really try to work to understand the other in that context.
So one of the things that I found on payscale.com was a statistic that said some experts say that 70% of people ended up in their current positions thanks to networking. Others say it's more like 80, 85%. You cannot, I think, underestimate how much networking has to do with your ability to find your place in the art world. I think that the art world, it may even be higher than these figures. This is for business, where you still theoretically get something by going to an interview.
100% of my career positions have been 100. Only once, actually, one summer job between college and graduate school.
And yeah, I may go off script here a little bit, but I think one of the reasons that New York City is so important in the art world is because it's one big giant networking system for artists, and that we are close enough to that a lot of the energy from our community can sometimes get sucked up that way. So I think that the whole networking component just can't be underestimated when trying to find your place in the art world. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So your objective in networking is to exchange information. In this particular exercise, the elevator speech is to exchange information for a future encounter. And to make that first good impression, you need to focus on the exchange. Whether it's Facebook, hooking up on Facebook, email, Instagram, trading business cards, you can always have to expect a certain percentage of rejection in no matter what kind of it. And it may not have anything to do with you. So I think that's important to really get across, that all of us, when we're putting ourselves out here, have to be able to handle a certain amount of no, because there's a lot of no in art, let me tell you. And that just runs with the territory.
A lot of that no has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with your work. one of the things when we've been talking about this in the conversation, there's a reason why people like chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry ice cream. People have different tastes, they have different needs, they have different interests, they have different origins, they have different cultural input. And so a rejection is not necessarily a rejection in any way, shape, or form of you or your work. It's the fact that it may just not appeal to me.
Yeah, well, there's the other thing, Joan, is maybe that it does appeal to them, except for the fact that they're already selling a form of vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry, and they don't need another chocolate because they got chocolate all covered right now, and they're not going to compete with the chocolate they're already selling. So, you know, it could be that, oh yeah, I love your stuff because it looks like this stuff on the wall, but you know what? I'm not going to bring in another artist exactly like that. It's just dumb. Right. So, I mean, it's just not good business sense. So,
but it doesn't, but like the important thing for the takeaway on that is it's not about you.
yes, that's absolutely it. And that you got to take a little bit of you out of the ball game when you're talking about this. A lot of times we get our sense of selves caught up in our artwork, which is probably not the best idea, even if you're making good art. So, anyhow, can we go to business cards next?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at the end of that, there's going to be hopefully an exchange of business cards. But business cards should, for success, you want them really to increase your chances. So they should have certain common kind of look. And one is you should have a business a picture of an image of the work that you're doing today, and not, you know, really old work. So if you have really old cards, it's time to change them out for something new. Cards aren't that expensive when you consider the kind of expenses you have of, you know, compared with those for getting in shows or just doing the art itself. You want to, I think it's a good idea to put a picture on the back of with your work on it. This will replace the need really to shove a phone underneath somebody's nose when they're not prepared for it. You do have to think about whether your work is current, you know, and what I said before is you if it's not fresh, you need to get a new look on those cards. Is your card readable? I have plenty of cards that I took home, and I absolutely couldn't read particularly their email. So I couldn't send them anything afterwards. And, you know, if you're giving somebody a card, presumably it's so that they will use it at some point. And it's unusable if it's unreadable. Yeah, you might be able to put some fancy stuff on there, but not so much that, you know, I was taught when I was doing graphic design, the text is to read. And it's very important that your cards be readable, especially when it comes to names, phone numbers, and the email, you know, connection site, home points. I think you should use a standard size. When people get a rack of cards, they put them all in the same bin. They really want to be able to get after those cards and look at them again. Hopefully they'll hold them onto them for a while. If you're giving out funny sized cards, they don't fit with anything like that. And especially if they get really super small, they tend to get lost. Yeah, you know, I've gotten cards that are as small as a postage stamp. And I think that doesn't do you a service in the way. I mean, they're really not the most expensive thing. And I think that's something to really be thought through before you order an off-size card. Cards are mainly made to slide right into a wallet. They're right about the size for that, and everybody sort of is familiar with that size. Do not use full solid reverses on the front. What that means is if the color goes all the way to the edge and it's all black and all your text is white, it doesn't read as well. And you know, it can make your text look smaller. Am I right about that, Joan? Is it makes?
I was going to, as a printer for 23 years, we printed a lot of business cards.
Yeah.
And I would say the older I got, the style became more white space and the smaller the type got.
Yeah.
but with full solid reverses where you're doing a full float of a color of ink like black,
Yeah.
the thin lines fill in.
Yes.
So it makes it much more difficult to read. If you even look at this slide, having red ink against the black is more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's already the red against the black is more difficult. Having reverse on these slides does stand out because we're seeing them large. But when you're floating ink on the paper, you stand a chance of clogging.
Yes, red is a very dark color, and we know black is a dark color. So that does make it harder to read.
When we were talking the other day about business cards, I had said this is sort of a box that I have of probably a year and a half of business cards from folks. And I don't. I just put them in the box. I concur with Eric's. We used to make our business cards, by the way, professionally as printers. A card I think is 2 by 3, 2.5 by 3. It's been 15 years. 2.5 by 3. We would make it a 1/16 of an inch taller, but then we could do it ourselves. So it was a 1/16 of an inch taller than standard. So it wasn't 2.5 or whatever the upside was. It was a 1/16 taller, and we make it on a slightly heavier paper, a slightly heavier cardstock. That was for ourselves, so it would stick out. And in the old Rolodex days, the heavier card would fall open when you turned your roll. These days, that doesn't matter. And these days, I agree with Eric. When you get somehow it became a style to these long, skinny ones that are about 3/4 of an inch by 2 inches or something, or the square. I find them I'm less interested. I sort of have no way of filing them and finding them again. So that practically, they become less useful. I was showing some examples that I found in the box. I'm gonna, Adam Hager and Marcia Fry, I hope you'll allow me to show your card. This is a card when Eric was saying, have a picture of your work on one side, and then on the other side, as clear as you can. Can you read this? I'm not sure if I'm holding it
upside down.
Upside down there.
Yeah.
As clear as you can see, and large and clear is his website, his email. His name is there 3 times because it's adamhager.com, adamhager@gmail, Adam Hager. And it was copywritten too. So that's pretty clear. This is another card. I don't know Marcia Fry. I probably will after this, so contact me. But this is another one that shows a photograph of her work. And then on the back side is just her name, her phone number, her Instagram, her Facebook, and her email. That's all you really need these days. And what I liked about these cards, by the way, both of them, is that this is on a satin finish. This is on a regular paper finish. If I want to make a note right on a pen, I can. With a high gloss, high printed stock, I can't do that. I'm in a full reverse. You can't, nobody can take a pen and just write on it if they want to make a note. Like where they met that person and who were they with and what was the context, which is a very useful thing to do when you get a business card. Where were you? I met them at the ABC
Yeah,
open.
down at
QR code.
Yeah, so when you're putting together your card, I think you want to avoid a fancy logo. I think that the art should be selling itself and not a logo should be trying to sell it. So I think that if you have the picture on the back of your work, that usually does it. If it's too graphic designy, you may find that people are concentrating on the graphic design of the card and not the content of it. And may think that, this is, may have a disconnect with your artwork. And then adding a QR code can help people in a day and age where people like to take their phone and just use an app, go straight to your website. And once they're in there and they're poking around, they can see all sorts of things, especially if you make it easy for them to do that. A side note is that when you're putting together your website, make sure that it works on your phone and on the computer, because they can be quite different as how they download.
Before we get to the next, before we take a breath on business cards, before we get to the next section, Asma, are there any questions that folks have written because I don't have it here.
Thank you, Joan. Yeah, I want to open it up to everyone. I think we've been doing such a great job listening to all the great feedback and tips that you have. So at this time, you're welcome to unmute the mic if you have a question or type it in the chat window.
I type in the chat window because we're going to continue, if that's okay. We're still going to be doing program.
Definitely, definitely.
So
So go for it.
We would love to hear.
Go for it. So yes, please type that in for us and we'll continue forward. Thank you.
One of the questions that came up, and we're going to bring it up tonight, but I think it's a question that probably will be a recurring theme in the talking to a gallerist and talking to collectors. And it's a common misconception that I think Eric came across in the Chris, the book that you were discussing earlier. That is, if a gallery or a collector isn't interested in the artist's work, it's because they don't understand it. And
yeah,
I think a little bit because we're going to expand it more later, but
yeah. Before I answer that question, which I'm going to in a second, I just want to give a shout out to everybody who was a gallerist that I talked to. I talked to several people in the field, including Liz Ash was the person that I talked to who's been working many years in the field. I talked to Nancy Sasser of McLean Project for the Arts, Judith Hartsong of Art Matters. No, it's Artists and Makers, and which is a studio space and a gallery I've shown in before, and then of course Mary Early, who's part of our board of directors and part of and is instrumental in running Hemp Hill. But I really appreciate all that because I got to see a little bit behind the scenes from those people, and they were very generous with their time, and I appreciate that. I got these particular answers or thoughts about this from a website on major misconceptions about galleries and artists, and it's one of the links that is at the end of this PowerPoint, and it basically says some of the stuff we've already been talking about, which is you cannot assume that just because a gallery collector or a gallerist or a curator doesn't seem interested in the work, that it's because they don't understand it. Because if they probably understand it fine. They've been seeing so much art, there's probably no way they don't understand it. They may even understand it better than you do because they've seen so much. What I'm trying to say is they may not be interested in your work because A, they already have stuff like that. B, that at that particular moment, they have something else on their mind, and this is not the most important thing. There could be 100 different things why you might be rejected. Now, I am like a lot of artists who try to get shows and try to show my art wherever I can. And there's a healthy bit of rejection there. But if you take it personally every time, you're probably going to start losing your temper and stuff. And one of the no-nos in all this is if you're making a connection with somebody, you absolutely cannot lose your temper with them. And because then they know that you're a hothead and they don't want to deal with that kind of thing. Generally speaking, though, don't just assume that you have to keep talking over them and trying to keep explaining it. Because that's really not going to get you anywhere. And it may even set you up for another time where they might have been receptive, might say, this guy's a little pushy, or this right. One isn't exactly the type of person I want to do business with. And really, you're in it to make a connection and do business with somebody, or do make some sort of transaction with somebody they could trust. And it doesn't build trust to sort of bull rush somebody like that.
Right. Thank you. I think that's an important piece of conversation because that brings it sort of full circle. You can't sell anyone anything they have to buy. People have to buy, because don't you assume that because they're not interested, they're not understanding. That's arrogance of sorts, really. Let's start with the assumption they do understand and.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to make ourselves a little bit vulnerable and do our own, do some of our own elevator speeches. And so I'm going to be responding to somebody who has just asked me, well, how are you involved in, why are you involved, or how are you involved in the sculptors group? And I would sort of say, thanks, you're very kind to ask. I'm a business person, a partner in a small commercial real estate company. We primarily work with properties inside the Beltway in the Washington, Baltimore area. But my connection to art is a lifetime collector of art, primarily Baltimore, Washington area work. There's a separate story, work from Oracle, Arizona. As far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of world-class work produced here and few galleries and dealers. My commitment is to support and promote this community of artists as best I can, and to help the organizations that benefit the art producers in this community. That's pretty much my statement, my elevator speech. That is what I am about in this community. Somebody asked, and I think Eric had said you have to have a follow-up. You have to be ready with a follow-up. What's Oracle, Arizona have to do with it? My sister and brother-in-law, my sister who recently died last year, and brother-in-law lived on an art ranch in Oracle, Arizona, which is 30 miles out of Tucson. Some very junior people from the University of Arizona bought to get in the 1960s, what 180-acre dude ranch where Andy Warhol had done most of his filming, and created an art ranch. My sister lived her life there, and I became very connected with that ranch. And they still exist. There are second and third generation people living on the ranch, 40 households, and they have galleries, they have studio spaces, they produce art, music, poetry, and it's a pretty major organization. So that's probably the first one was about 38 seconds we tried, but the last when we actually timed it, that's about as close as you can get to the time. Eric, you want to do one?
Yeah.
Actually, you did it earlier. We heard you do it earlier.
Yeah, I did do it earlier. It's almost, thank you. So kind for you to ask. You're going to find that we've sort of cottoned on to that one. So,
There's another one. All in each. We'll talk about that later.
I create installations that describe environmental change using trash as a metaphor. My name is Eric Celarier, and I use sculptures, prints, paintings, videotape to show interaction with, with our interaction with the world. I'd love to connect. May I give you this card? And is there a preferred way I could reach you? And a follow-up might be, there have been 5 major extinctions over the course of Earth's history. We are changing the environment. Earth's creatures will end up having to adapt, and our choices may could result in similar transformations that may or may not leave us out of the mix. So I thought that I create these installations that describe that change with the
Eric, you're fading. I can't hear you. That's the critical part. Eric, you're fading. I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's probably that is my issue is fading, But yes.
Okay. One of the things neither Eric nor I did was ask if it was okay if I gave that person my business card, and nor did I ask for theirs. So we all still are honing our craft on this one.
Oh, I thought I did that time. I thought I said, may I give you this card? So.
Okay, well, I'll accept your card. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, righty.
Okay, one more indulgence that I'm going to ask, and that is, it occurred to me that if we turned, in fact, the Zoom camera on anyone, and in fact, Ozma was very sweet in trying to act very surprised. We did rehearse that, but it was not rehearsed.
It still felt warm and
had
uncomfortable.
what I call the deer in the headlights look. And I suspect that if we turned the camera on anyone in this group listening and said, tell us about yourself, especially after this whole talk, it would be the deer in the headlights, like, really, me? And all of a sudden, mind would go blank. And I'm going to tell I told a story about doing a presentation in Pechacucha. My sister, as I said, died last year, August 18th. And we did in October a celebration of her life. And I was invited to do a talk that would introduce her as a child and a girl and a young woman, because all these folks knew her as an adult and they had a little history. And the first thing that came to my mind is that when my sister and I were little girls, my father, when he was shaving in the morning, would sing a Robert Burns song that Flow Gently, Sweet Often, that had become a popular song at the time. And that my sister and I would be giggling and listening to him, his beautiful baritone, as he'd be shaving and he'd be singing the song. So I wanted to open this talk by singing. Now, the one thing you may have to know about me, if I'm scared about public speaking, I'm terrified about singing because I don't have a singing voice. And there's going to be between 250 and 300 people in attendance. But I decided I had to do it. And so without warning friends, I would break into the song for the 2 months before. And I'd say, you're going to have to listen to me, please. And I would sing it. And then I would sort of tell them why I was singing it. But to actually do it the day that 300 people were there, I made the decision that I was not going to be terrorized. I was going to do the trick that I learned with Petra Kucha and stand. And so I'm going to sing for you. It's okay. You'll be spared. But I ended up standing with my arms behind me because that was the only way to control my fear. I planted my feet as firmly as I could on the ground. And I literally opened my chest and I started singing. And it worked. And it worked as a poem. It worked as the eulogy I wanted to give her. And it worked as the connection with the audience who could visualize these two little girls listening to their dad while he was shaving, singing this beautiful Robert Burns poem from 1799. And why I'm telling you this story is I associate elevator speeches in my own life when people put you on the spot and say, well, tell me about yourself. And all of a sudden you've been thinking about 3 other things and the thing you just had and the one you're holding in your hand. And all of a sudden there's the deer in the headlights look and your mind goes blank and you're struggling for the words. And what I've learned to do is plant my feet. But actually there's something that's before the planting your feet. There's the rehearsing and the practicing and the writing and practicing. And then there is the decision to do it, the decision to be strong in the context of fear. And I had to use a technique of, putting my hands behind my back and planting my feet. It worked. It worked. And I wanted to share that because, again, I once had a teacher, a dance teacher, a ballet teacher, who said, do you come into a room saying, am I? Or do you come into a room saying, I am? And I had made that decision early on that I wanted to be someone who presented myself as being very present. And I invite each of you to realize that's not an accident. And it's not even an accident of personality. I'm not an introvert or an extrovert. I mean, I am probably an extrovert, but I'm certainly not an extrovert that would sing a song in front of 300 people without the decision to do it. And so I'm inviting you to take a stand in your elevator speech in the way you present yourself, in the way you present your story, with a full voice and a full heart and a full commitment to being present in spite of your fear. So that was the last thing that I wanted to add to the story.
Thank you, Joan. That is so wonderful for you to share your courage and vulnerability. Wow, 300 people. Amazing, amazing.
I wouldn't want to hear me Danny Boy, but that one I worked.
We appreciate that. So before I go into closing remarks, I wanted to say if we didn't get to your question or if there's something you're still thinking about, we will stick around and we'll give you follow-up information on how to contact us. So I want to be conscientious of your time as well. Okay, so thank you again, everyone, tonight, this evening. We hope that you found tonight's program interesting and helpful. Now we'd like to turn it over to our WSG chairperson, Annie Farrar, who's been graciously driving these slides and showing us the resources right now. And she can tell us more about the programs coming up. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all for coming. It's so exciting to see so many, hear that there are a lot of new faces and see so many familiar ones. If you're new in town or feeling isolated, we are doing these members forums once a month that are sort of like a, whoop, I didn't touch it, moved itself. We are doing these member forum happy hours every once a month, and so Tuesday, September 15th at 7 p.m. We're having one of those, and that's a great way to get to meet people. I've been really happy. We've got to meet a lot of members that I didn't know very well before. We are having another one. It's in the professional. Oh no, that's today. The approaching a gallery. Okay, so next.
Oh, we wrote elevator. We didn't take over elevator speech. Sorry.
Elevator speech. Yeah, approaching a gallery on the 21st of September.
Right.
So that will be the next in this session, the series.
It is the wrong date, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Annie. It should read the 1st of September, and that's the one approaching a gallery.
Oh, okay, right. The
Wrong
date.
date.
Ignore that date. We will have more information. Artina 2020 is open now at the Sandy Spring Museum, and I highly encourage you, if you're able to get out there. It's a beautiful exhibition, and you can do that socially distant. There also are, just found out this week, there are food truck Fridays there that are happening right now. So between 5 to 7 on a Friday night is a great time to go. They rotate every week, so I don't know what's going to be there, but that's a lot of fun. And we are also planning on trying to get some artist talks lined up for that. Sculpture Now is opening on September 17th and at McLean Project for the Arts. And that is, also a show. I know we have members from both shows in the audience today, so shout out to them.
Mm-hmm.
And other resources, you can go to our website at washingtonsculptors.org. You can contact Asma at social@washingtonsculptors.org if you want to send in your work or anything like that. I also want to give a plug to membership. We are a volunteer organization, so your membership really counts, and we appreciate any membership or donations if you're able to. So please consider joining if you haven't already. And we are looking forward to seeing more of you all. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And I'm going to turn the screen share off so we can all see each other.
Yeah.
Right on. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
all. It's been fun.
Great. And I wanted to reiterate that Sarah had asked about the press release for Artina 2020. That's available on our Facebook page. You're more than welcome to download it there. Please go out and see it like Annie said. And we're just so gracious to have you here tonight too.
Hi, Asma. This is Linda.
Linda.
Ms. Buga. Yes, I wanted to remind people to send in your submissions for the newsletter. If you've been in an exhibition or you're planning to be in an exhibition, if you have a commission, send in your information to membernews@washingtonsculptor.org. So, and the deadline is August 23rd, which is right around the corner, but I did want to remind everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. That's awesome.
It's really very nice to have it in writing. We've continued to do a paper copy of the newsletter because it's important at some point to have a record, an archival record, and we think that it's very important for you to post your events. It's delightful. And if you're a new member, make sure you're up on the gallery. The website, we're renovating the website. There's some older things up there now, but it's being worked on now. And the gallery is a wonderful place to list. And we know for a fact that a lot of independent curators and the gallerists do look at it for shows.
Awesome. Thank you. So many great opportunities.
Any questions? Any comments?
Yeah, feel free.
Have any of you had that deer in the headlights experience? Being Elizabeth, will you tell us about it?
Go ahead, Liz, you're still muted.
Okay, so because I recreate domestic spaces as my work, for a large part of it, people give me that deer in the headlights look a lot. And so I try to say that less unless they're looking at an image that's on my card. And I use forts as interactive installations as the entry point for people to understand what that means. Because forts are a universal game and they're fun. So yeah, I've had that from the
I've
reverse.
had that experience. Do you think any of the tips that we talked about in terms of preparing and having keywords would help you in
Oh
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I took notes.
So
because it was
what did we leave out? Is there anything that we left out?
No.
I have one tip I'd like to add that maybe didn't get mentioned tonight, which is at the end of the elevator speech, throw the ball in their court. So instead of ending it with a period, end it with a question mark. So it gives them room to respond, and it makes them feel that you are open and you want to listen and care about them. So that's a tactic of mine. I always try to put the ball back in their court.
Well, thank you for
There's
that.
a very interesting comment in a sales context. We used to do a conversation that would, before there was any meeting, I used to rehearse my reps on what is the premise of the meeting. That is, why do you think, we know why you're there. Why do you think the customer is there? What is it? What problem are they trying to solve? Why are they in this context? And the first thing I would invite them to do is ask the other, we're here together today to talk about this. Is that correct? Do you agree with that? Or is there anything I need to know about what else it is so that you're using your time wisely? The second thing is, what is the objective of this meeting? What is my objective of this meeting? What do I want to accomplish? And the third is, what is my commitment objective? What do I want the other to commit to? So it's in a way a little bit different than throwing the ball into their court. And I agree with you about the friendliness and keeping the attention on them. But the question becomes, what do I want the outcome of this conversation to look like? And it may not be a sale. It may be I want them to agree that they will even consider to look at my brochure. It's my commitment objective. I want them to consider my work unique or useful. So, and to express that in the conversation. So I agree with you about throwing the ball in their court, but in a way you want to control the next step. So I'd love to learn more about what you're doing in environmental art, because that's something you're interested in, something I'm working on. And I'm wondering if it would be okay if I called you to follow up so we could just spend a few minutes and I could find out more about what you're doing. Yeah. That leaves the interest in the light is on them, but the ball handling is on you. You're asking for permission to get back to them.
Yeah, but it's definitely a question at the end, and I think I think that you guys are talking about the same thing. Only you're saying that it has to be strategic, and I think that probably makes good sense.
Yeah, it's just a matter of who's controlling the next step.
Not to put her on the spot, Mary, is there anything you think that we have left out that you would like to add, or do you think we got it?
Hey, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think you did a nice job of conveying the gist of our conversation last night. I would reiterate to you all to understand that when you get that 30 seconds in the elevator, it is a really great opportunity, and there can be a feeling on the part of the artist that you are somehow inferior to or subservient to the particular contact, whether that's a curator or an art dealer or a collector, but you have to project confidence so that they see you as something that they want to attain connection with.
Right. You have to be valuable.
Every stage of advancing your career, and at a certain point, you will be the person who other people are approaching. So think of that as your potential trajectory. How would I work? How would I talk? How would I be in this community of people whose love and passion and work and life is art? And what will I be asking for from others? And in turn, what am I going to be giving to others? Whether it's tomorrow or 20 years from now, or or longer. So I think this flows both ways.
Right.
From everyone, up, down, all right.
I would agree with that, Mary, so totally. I think often in sales, a new salesperson, and often I think in art where the work is not about selling yourself, so there's a certain discomfort in doing that, is to not to feel supplicant.
Correct.
Often people do, because it feels like the other is completely controlling their fate.
Mm-hmm.
And what my sales was a very technical sales. Printing sales was a very technical sales, and it made a big difference to corporations. And the trustworthiness and the ability of the rep made a very big difference in the quality of work that would be out there and the quality of the experience of the customer. Well, the work that you're doing, if it's in fact unique and powerful and worthy, is contributing something to our history as a people. Think about it. I mean, think about the role of art in our universe, in our lives, and in a way, we have museums. Museums are, are places for things that are done, finished. On the other hand, they are our cultural continuity, and that's history, and that's what you bring to the table. So there's nothing that needs to be supplicant about it. It has value. So.
Yeah. I'm loving Sarah's jazz hands and snaps. Definitely. I know, being a part of history, right? It's hard to feel it when you're currently in your practice and making and thinking long term. Where's this going? Am I a commercial artist? Is it about selling myself? You know, anytime anyone asks me, what are you working on? That's where I get the deer in the headlights. Right. Great.
We all do. We absolutely all do. But the more, when Eric was talking about, find the 20 words, find the 10 words, find the 5 words, I don't think any of us will forget Bollywood colorful yarn bond. Sorry, it's fixed in my brain, and it only took 4 words. So it's the power of our understanding an essential part of what we're doing. The color was important, the installation quality of it, and the process of it. I'm assuming the job and the frenzy and the joy of doing it is part of it. So that's confident. That will build you. Having the words to describe even the most serious work.
Mm-hmm.
Having the words will help you convey that with confidence and with value.
Mm-hmm.
Another tip, I think it helps to include a way someone that you say something people can laugh at. So within your 30 seconds, you're getting them to laugh. Yeah. And that's just another little tip it doesn't have to all be humorous, but to have some humor in your arc and give them an opportunity to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have done something slightly provocative. So I'm trying to remember specifically, because it really got somebody's attention, whose attention I wanted to get. And it was by being slightly provocative. I don't remember what it was I said. I was trying to think of it last night, but it was like this person, all of a sudden I was singled out of the crowd because I asked the question that nobody else sort of had the courage in that moment to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Humor but you have to be careful with that. It could be a double-edged sword.
You gotta, I mean, if you're extemporaneously funny and you watch where that's going so that it doesn't go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That sounds, I mean, that's going to be a home run. But if it is a joke that you tell a lot, chances are other people have heard it. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be humorous, but just be careful that it doesn't get too cute, because it could completely backfire on you.
Yeah, like if it's something you said literally once a week at every opening you go to for years, it's going to be tired, and it's going to even sound tired, and it's repulsive at that point, and definitely not funny. Like, funny catered to that particular moment.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great point, and I think it's important not only to rehearse, but have a flavor of serendipity, and you're tailoring it to that person. And at the same time, you're talking, but you're reading their body language. And am I boring them? Is there a light in their eyes? Did I pique their interest or take them away from eating their wine and cheese?
Yeah, there's some interesting things about presentations. I mean, and this presentation was really great. And this is the only thing I know from applying to grad school. Now that I'm in grad school, was applying that, doing all these presentations for different schools was like, the best presentations you do are the ones where you have these key words.
Yes.
Where if you try to script it or you try to memorize your lines, it will be totally transparent. Whereas if you have these keywords, you could come up with a new joke every single time if you're trying to be funny.
Yeah.
Because if the context of your art or whatever is inherently funny, if you just have a keyword that relates to that, you can make a new joke every single time. Yeah, I mean, I thought your comment about keywords was really important.
Yeah.
I would reiterate also that you really need to practice speaking about your work to everyone and
Yes.
in every way possible. And every studio visit where you have a conversation with someone, whether it's another artist, a friend, a family member, curator, whatever, it helps you uncover what your keywords for your work are. Writing about it is very different than speaking about it and responding to questions. And it took me 15 years to become comfortable speaking about my work. And I knew that it took all that time because it took all those opportunities to speak with other people. When you realize whether someone understands you or not, you know what you said right or wrong. So if you end the conversation and they still don't get what you do, somehow you can say the right thing. So you have to identify that. So my advice is do as many nursery school studio tours as you can for 6-year-olds, learn to talk to them, and then talk to some elderly people, and then spread it out a little bit in the middle.
And Uncle Bob's not a bad guy either. Again, when I was singing that song, that poem, I sang to everybody that wasn't nailed down. And I'd say, "I'll tell you why later." And then I started singing the song. They would call me and say, "Hi, Joan," and I'd say, "Okay, I know you got something you want to say, but I'm going to sing a song, and then you'll ask me about it later." Don't be shy about it. Friends love you; they will indulge you. But am I to say, if you really understand something, you can explain it so a 3-year-old will understand it. And she was right. I think that the onus is on, I guess sometimes we think that that we're not verbal, and that's why we make things with our hands. We sort of make that divide sometimes. And I think the more you talk about it, the more, like Eric said when he was at that art event where he had to speak about it 1,000 times, or when I was hired in sales, the first thing I did was, me and another guy had to go out to Tyson's Corner in Vienna and knock on every single door in that community to talk about in those business centers, every single door, and not come back to where we were hired until we had gone to every door to present a new brochure about Valmar Printing, which had bought a little print shop out in Tyson's. By the end of that 2-3 weeks, I had my elevator speech about Valmar Printing backwards and forwards, upside down and inside out, and can still do it 40 years later if you were to ask me. I don't, but if you were to ask me. And it's that constancy and that rehearsal. But the other thing that for me is critical is, okay, as a collector, I can't say that I understand a lot of, I understand for me the work that's in my life. Necessarily understand or know the motive or what went into the making of it. I don't, and then when I look at my own life, do I actually understand my own work well enough? What are my keywords in what I'm doing in life, right? I think what I'm doing in life is a lot less complicated in a lot of ways than what a lot of you are doing in terms of finding those keywords. So the effort to really distill, and what Mary's saying, it took her a long time to be able to talk about her work, is it's both a matter of practice, but it also takes Mary, did it take you a long time to really come to terms with what you were working on trying to communicate and do with your work?
It took me that time to become comfortable speaking with people because I am not a natural born public speaker.
Okay.
So when I was a, senior in college, I did not have to address large groups about my work. I did not have to, prepare a lecture and deliver it and that kind of stuff. In my career as an artist and as a dealer, I speak with people all the time in small informal ways and then in more formal ways. So by trial and error, you learn is what is successful in communicating, what results in a connection, what results in the person understanding what you're saying.
Right.
It wasn't like it took me that time to understand my work. It took me that time to practice.
How to say it, how to talk about it.
But actually to become comfortable.
Right.
Most artists are not public speakers.
Right.
Some people are gifted with speech. They're rare. Most people fumble it for a long time. So my recommendation also is to take up any offers of speaking opportunities, even if they, like say you get asked to be on a panel at a university art program or something. That's great. It's a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Be a visiting artist where you can do studio visits with MFA students. You'll talk to 20 artists in one day and then give it to them for work. That's great practice.
Yeah. Right.
That's fantastic.
Good, Asma.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Helen,
Helen, go ahead, Helen. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the kind of along the lines of what you all have been talking about just now is that I found that one of the things about practicing saying it to a lot of people and all kinds of people is that then you start to get certain questions that get asked of you over and over again.
Right.
So now you kind of know what people are interested in or what a lot of people are interested in, and then you can kind of foreground that.
Right. You can bring that into your talk, into your elevator.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Those are wonderful tips and techniques. And I just want to herald those thoughts of, we're here to make a connection and to share our visual lives, and in a verbal, a visual way, expressive, be a part of history, contribute where we can. One thing I think of all the time is, hey, if you make it big and the elevator goes up, please send it back down for the rest of us. I always think of that. But, you all have been so charming this evening. Thank you so much for participating. I want to thank you for spending the last 2 hours with us on a very important topic. And I wish you a great evening. So please connect with us. If you're not a member, please sign up. We've got great events. Hey, a pandemic did not stop us, okay? We've actually gone more into prime time and seen each other and connected really well. So thank you for being part of the Washington Sculptors Group family. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Thumbs up. Got it. Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
This was great.
Thank you, Mary.
I started troubleshooting my printer at the end there, so I can't wait to see the video. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.